So here's the deal. I've got several $1,000s worth of Belgian ale ready to roll out for my Nomad brewery. But before it gets put into keg and hits the market, there's one crucial question from the brew day that needs answering. Should I dry hop it? To find out, I brewed a test batch at home. Now I'm about to discover if dry hopping malty Belgian style ales is worth it or a total mistake. But the clock's ticking on this one. The pro beer is about to be kegged. By the end of this video, we're going to decide whether malt-forward Belgian ales are enhanced or ruined by adding a dry hop. So today, we're going to be tasting a homebrew that I created as part of a test to test a craft beer that I'm making for my Nomad brewery. So a quick recap for those of you who missed the brew day. We brewed a beer inspired by Belgian golden ales, triples, and similar. But instead of the usual 8% plus, we're going for a 5% or a more moderate strength. The idea behind this beer is to be a more sessionable Belgian style beer with those same Belgian flavors and esters. But in doing so, we also get a crisper, refreshing beer with a little bit of honey maltiness and clean bitterness. So the fermentation went well. It did actually start quite quickly. I was a little bit worried about how fermentation would go, as I was using yeast that had been used the previous day in the pro brews from the brewery home and stuck it in the freezer. So a bit worried if it would actually start fermenting at all and how that would go, but it did actually go successfully and it went according to the schedule that I was hoping that it would go on. So I was aiming for 5% ABV out of the fermenter or in the keg. Unfortunately, I didn't quite hit that. We only ended up with about 3.5% or just under 4% for the bottled condition versions. So this is because I did not hit the original gravity target that I was aiming for. I was aiming for an original gravity of 1044, but unfortunately, I only hit 1038. This beer does come in a little bit lighter than I intended. And of course, it is lighter than the actual pro beer that is being brewed. The beer was also slightly under attenuated as well. And I wonder whether this does have to do with the fact that I was using yeast from an open packet that was basically put in the freezer. I mean, it was not resealed or anything like that, just sort of wrapped up tightly and just stuck in the freezer. And also with the IBU and bitterness count, we get about 38 IBUs with the homebrew version, which is pretty much what we wanted. Well, at least theoretically it's 38. Whether it is actually 38, no idea. Don't have the equipment to measure it. And the keg version has been pressurized to about 12 PSI, giving us about 2.4 volumes of CO2. I packaged it 3 days ago in keg, so we'll see how carbonation goes and whether I've been able to successfully force carbonate it in time or not. So as I alluded to, this is a test for a pro craft beer that I'm making. So for my Nomad brewery, JKB Brewing, I have another pilot batch of craft beer that's being made for me. So this will be the second one. So the idea behind this beer is to alleviate some of the concerns that I've been getting around trying to sell my dark wheat beer at this time of year, moving into spring and then into summer. Venues are worried about how a dark beer is going to sell. And a lot of the venues I speak to have a big backlog of dark beers that they need to get through, which didn't quite sell over winter. So it is very hard to get in with a dark beer at the moment. So the idea behind this beer is to give venues an offering that is a pale style of beer that is crisper, more refreshing, and more suited for those summer months. So the idea is it's going to have some crisp maltiness, a little bit of honey malt in there as well, just to give it a little bit of sweetness and flavor, and it's going to have clean, crisp bitterness as well. That is how this beer typically drinks, and when I've made it at home in the past, that is how it ends up. The idea behind this one is basically it is supposed to be a sessionable version of a strong golden or similar style Belgian ale. But when I was having this beer brewed at the local brewing co who are brewing this beer under contract for me, the head brewer suggested that I think about adding in a dry hop just to elevate it a little bit and just add a little bit of something special. Now, of course, in the past, I've never done this on this beer at home. And so instead of just risking just chucking a dry hop in and seeing how it goes, I wanted to test it first to get some idea of what it might do to the beer. And just to make sure I don't make a complete total mistake and waste thousands of dollars of craft beer. Okay, now let's get to the testing and actually drink some beer. Okay, so as you can see, the beer is a little bit flat. It's like a golden color, very cloudy. Yeah, unfortunately no head, but let's see what we can do about that. There is a bit of like some hoppy character, like a little bit of juicy hoppiness. So I was using Motueka hops or Belgian Saaz. Yeah, I can get that aroma of the Motueka hops in there. It's like a little bit like a lemony, limey kind of vibe going on. Yeah, so there's this sort of refreshing, slightly sweet and juicy lemon and lime character going on the aroma. It smells very much like Motueka hops. If you've ever had that before and you know what that smells like and tastes like, you'll know what I mean. Otherwise, if you don't, just think refreshing lemon lime. Just trying to see if I can get any maltiness or any of those Belgian esters coming through. Now, of course, the other thing too is that I've not used this particular yeast in this beer before, so I don't know exactly what yeast profile I'm going to get from it, but let's just see if we can detect any. I think there is this subtle fruitiness also coming through, which may be from the yeast. It's lacking some carbonation, unfortunately. Just elevate this beer a bit more, missing some ABV and some malt in it as well. Yeah, so on the tongue, this beer's got a soft palate and there's a little bit of the savory, crackery, crisp maltiness coming through as well, which is a nice touch. Nice and like crisp and sort of like refreshing character. If you're enjoying this deep dive into brewing and craft beer exploration and some of the unique things that I am looking at here on the channel, then check out our unique beers on my website. I'll be updating the site soon with all the details of the Pro Beer Belgian Ale that is coming out, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any future videos so you can follow our craft beer journey from homebrew to pro brew. But what's your take on dry hopping Belgian ales? Is it a game changer or just unnecessary? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And then on the finish, there's a little bit of pepperiness, which I think is from the yeast. There's also clean bitterness as well, which is what I want. And then there's also like a little bit of maltiness in the finish as well. It's a little bit like when you have, say, like a nice, crisp, refreshing like Pilsner or lager, like that kind of savory, crackery bread note on the end in the after finish, which sort of plays well with that spicy character. Actually, it's like a little bit of like a savory biscuit, like a crisp, savory, crackery biscuit. And then of course, there's the hops as well. Right at the end there's a little bit of like lemony, limey Motueka vibe coming through as well. So you get the notes from that as well, which actually gives it a really quite nice, refreshing, crisp finish and clean as well. Nice and clean. So I think this would actually be quite a good beer for a hot day. So it is not too far away from the original intention I had with this beer. Now, of course, this particular one is missing a little bit of maltiness, and I think a little bit more maltiness wouldn't be a bad thing, actually, just to give it like a little bit more of that honey sweetness coming through, a little bit more of a backbone. So yeah, so can we taste the dry hop? Yes, I think we can. The lemon lime character from those hops is coming through, but it's still got a nice, clean bitterness. I think it's working well, actually, with the rest of the beer and giving that nice, refreshing character to it. Now it's time to answer the questions we've all been waiting for. Is it worth dry hopping the Belgian ales? Does it elevate it? Does it enhance it? Or does it just completely ruin it? And is it a mistake you should just avoid? So let's just talk about this beer specifically to start with. So I think with this beer, it actually worked really well. So the lemon lime refreshiness of this particular hop that I've used in here just added something a little bit special to the end, just elevated it enough to just give it a few more subtle layers of flavor and depth to it, which I really love about beers. So that might just be a personal thing for me, but I think it definitely worked in this case. Or it certainly complemented the crisp, clean bitterness and crisp malt, and also worked well with some of the spiciness from the yeast. Would this work with other Belgian beers? What are some of the things to keep in mind when doing it? So one thing I definitely think is when you're dry hopping a Belgian beer is to probably not overdo it with the dry hop, because the things that make Belgian beers is those yeast character. And so if you want to keep the Belgianness of your beer, you probably want to not overdo it, as if you do it too much, you'll probably just override and overpower all those other flavors of the beer. So for this one, if I just, put in 100 times the amount of hops, might lose some of the maltiness, probably not get any of the yeast character coming through. And the other thing too is probably picking a hop that gives an appropriate character for the beer as well. So this one had a lemon lime character, which worked well with the crispness and refreshiness that the beer already had. If you use maybe like a European hop, which might have that herbal or floral or spicy character to it, flavors that are already present in a lot of European beers and Belgian beers, it can enhance those flavors. So if you want to focus on a particular aspect of that, if you want to focus on the spiciness of a Belgian beer, maybe you can dry hop with something like a SARS or something that gives you like a bit of spicy hop character to just enhance that and complement it and just sort of highlight that particular character more. I'm keen to know whether this is something you would do, and if you've tried it at home, love to know your thoughts. But here's the thing, there's so many factors to consider when it does come to brewing. There's more than just hops or malt. Every little detail, every little ingredient can make or break your beer. And let's be honest, the deeper you dive into craft beer, the more you realize there's just another trick, technique, ingredient, or flavor to explore. And if you want to check out more craft beer, well, look no further than right here. Until next time, cheers.